Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing an update video on the 92 F1 build. I know it's been a while since we've done any videos on the channel, especially on this thing. This truck has been kind of on the back burner. Christian's been working on our buddy Aaron's truck right here. We'll do an update on that truck in a separate video. And we've just not had shocks either. That's been one of our excuses of why not to work on this thing. But now we do have shocks. And we have limited time because I'm going to school up at UC Irvine in about 2.5 weeks. So we're trying to have...
Don't say it like that.
Why?
That's so quick.
We're on a limited time schedule here. We have an ambitious schedule of what we want to get done on the truck before I do leave. So let's just jump into it and show you guys some of the stuff that we've done off camera. Probably the first thing you guys will notice is that we do have the final swingers on the truck now. In the last video, we just had some mock-up ones on there to start cycling everything. We have cycled the truck and made sure that it has zero bump steer on both sides. And by doing that, we got the distances that we needed from this pivot point down to the tie rod pivot point. And that's what allowed us to make these final swingers. We did go through a couple renditions, which we do have up on the table here. The first set of swingers we were disconnected right here so we could adjust the length of the pivot points. And then we went to these ones right here once we knew that pivot point from here to here. So this is our second set. And then the third set, the main difference you'll notice is right here. We noticed on the first set that we didn't have as much clearance to the frame rail as we wanted. So we went through and adjusted that on this one. And then I also put on this back piece just to make sure we had clearance to the tie rod when the truck was at full bump. So this was our last iteration before we went to the final design, and we got that all cut out and burned together.
In the last video, did we have the new beam pivots on there too?
So we had the kicked beam pivots on there, but obviously we haven't shown you guys any of this. So we got the rest of the pieces for the beam mount done, and Christian welded all that together and it's tacked back on the truck. Clearly the beams are off of the truck right now. Why'd we pull those off?
Pulled them because this mount right here from the beam to the radius arm, this was all just tacked together. So I went ahead yesterday, my brother made a sleeve to put in here so I could get all this welded together. And now we can go ahead and get these put back underneath the truck so we can cycle everything one last time. And then we can start making that final mounts for the swingers, because we still have just the mock-up tabs on the frame rails just for now until we can cycle it one more time. And then we're going to start working on getting those mounts finalized.
Some of the stuff's been sitting for a while, so there's a slight amount of surface rust, but we'll get all that handled. But in the last video, that was kind of a wash because we ended up cutting off the steering arms that we had made.
What?
And the main lesson that you guys should take away and that we took away from the last video is do not make the final version of things until you've tested it and made sure that it works. That seems obvious saying it now, but we just made a big mistake there and made the final steering arms before we had anything else done. So now, obviously, we just have two little popsicle sticks that we just use to cycle the steering and make sure everything works. So we're gonna go ahead and once we test everything, make sure there's zero bump steer still. We'll pull these off, get the dimensions off of it, and I'll draw the final steering arms up in SolidWorks. First things first, got to get the beams back onto the truck, start assembling things, and then we'll cycle it and make sure we have zero bump steer still. hopefully from that montage, you guys got a good idea of what we've been working on. And now we're going to go through the truck and talk about some of the things that we've done. For one, we got the steering arms on there. You guys saw that I drew those up in SolidWorks. We got them cut out on the good old plasma table. Christian got them all welded together. Came out super good, just a nice clean design. And then Christian also got the beam mounts burned in, and also got the beam to radius arm mounts burned in. You ended up making the tabs for the swingers as well.
Yep.
And that was all done by hand, right?
Hand and computer.
Okay, so you kind of used some mock-up stuff and then drew it in the computer from there?
Yeah, like I drew the rough shape of the main part of the tab on template paper, and then took that into the computer, and then I also did an overlay on it as well that has a little bit of a cutout and stuff in it too. So
you got to put overlays on everything, huh?
Well, it's got to all match.
You got to keep everything consistent. So Christian and I have kind of got a good process going to where we'll both make a mock-up of something, and then usually for like the steering arms, I'll draw it up in SolidWorks, we'll get it cut out, and then Christian will go through and weld it all together, just because he's way better than me at welding, so we leave that to him. But now we're working on getting the box put in the truck. We weren't able to do that until the swingers and all the tie rods were in there. That way we knew there would be clearances between the box and the tie rods. And let's just talk about some of those clearances real quick.
It's tight.
It's tight, but it all clears.
Yeah.
So you guys saw that we already had this notch put in the frame for the tie rod. Now you can see why we had to put that there. There's about a solid 1/4 inch of clearance, and we got that plate all Frenched in there.
But that is at full bump and full lock.
Correct.
So the clearance here usually isn't that tight. So if the truck is going straight, we can just turn it.
Just roll it up.
If the truck's going straight,
now you get a lot.
About right there. So you got a bunch of clearance. But with this steering arm on the spindle and how much caster is in this truck, when you go and turn, it pulls everything up. So you get a lot less clearance here.
Yeah, and if obviously you got to design everything to clear at full bump and full lock, but ideally you'll never be in this position. Else something really bad's probably happening. But you got to make sure everything clears for that. So that clears fine. You can see that those tie rod clearances to each other are good. There's probably about a 3/16 gap between them. Again, that's at full bump, full lock, so that's going to be when it's worst. Now we have, to get the box in there, we got the Howe power steering box in there. Got these two tubes tacked in there just to mount the box temporarily, and we're just checking our clearances. And the way we're gonna tie this all together as well is there's going to be tie rod coming from here, and then it'll get mounted off of this tie rod that goes to the swinger. On our old setup, and some people do this with equal length as well, is they'll have the tie rod coming from the pitman arm go to the actual swinger, but we're just going to end up going off the tie rod. One thing that we should also mention is these tie rods, this is 1 1/4 250 ball 4130 chromoly, so
made in the USA, baby.
Yeah, so those are some really strong tie rods. This is 1.5 inch 120 sleeve just to attach the 1 1/4 to the bung. And yeah, we shouldn't have any issues with these, especially with the tie rods being straight now. We don't have to worry about them bending a lot.
I'm pretty happy with how this stuff came out too.
Yeah, Christian went ahead and TIG welded all that together, so it all looks super nice. So yeah, so now we got to get working on mounting the box, and then we can do that last tie rod and also mount the ram on there as well. So time to just get back to work, dude.
Handle it.
Alright, here we are, day 300 of the 1-year front end build. About how long I've been trying to grow this mustache as well, but
How about that?
but neither of those things seem to be working out. So obviously final tie rods are in. You can see we got started on the ram mount right there. You see the frame side as well as the tie rod side in there. We're going to end up needing to get a bigger stroke ram because that center link cycles about 5 inches and we have a 4.5 inch stroke ram, so it just can't cycle lock to lock. So we're going to have to do an upgrade there. Not a big deal. It's just something that we're going to need to do. The box is all back in. We took that over to Hal and they got the stops put in there. So we get perfect 1.25 turns each way. The important part about putting internal stops in the box is marking it accurately for them to do. So we didn't use a Sharpie or anything like that. We took a scribe and made nice, clean, sharp marks that were not wide at all. That way they have a perfect position to put the stops at. So they got that all in there, no issues there. And now the steering cycles each way, no problem, stops exactly where we wanted it to. So that's why we started mounting the ram. Now we're going to need that one. And we still have to put some stops on the spindles. So what are you thinking about that?
I have no idea yet.
So before we did kind of a tab off the beam with an adjustable bolt on it, so we could put the stops where we wanted. We're kind of leaning away from having a bolt in there now and just having like a hard stop.
Yeah, it didn't work that great. I think towards the end of having that set up on this truck, we were starting to bend the tabs that the bolts were mounted to on the beam side. So I think what we're going to do is some sort of like thick piece of plate that the spindle will come over and hit, and then that way there's no chance of like a tab bending or anything like that and changing where the stop is actually at on the steering. So it just needs to be a really fixed point. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that still, but
yes, but that's going to be something you're going to have to deal with. I won't really be involved in that. The other thing that Christian got done as well is on this side. He got the final swinger mounts all in and then the notch put in here as well for the tie rod. So at full bump we can cycle the steering lock to lock and there's no interferences at all and everything clears properly. So for now the steering's pretty close to done, just a few things need to get wrapped up, but it's pretty much there. So you want to go talk about some shocks real quick?
Sure.
So you guys know before we were running the 3.5 inch King IBPs, and it was just a big single shock that was on the front of this thing. And with that shock, the internal bypass is almost like just a bump zone at the end of the shock where you get some additional dampening. Whereas now we're running a coilover and bypass. So 2.5 Prerunner series coilover and then a 3.5.
16-inch in length coilover and then 18-inch in length bypass.
Yes, so 3.5 race series bypass on there as well. So same shock package on all 4 corners now. We're running the exact same thing.
Yep.
So 16-inch coilovers, 18-inch bypass all the way around, and that's a big shock package for up front. Most people are running like a 14-16, so we've already found out that fitting a 16-18 in here is going to be kind of a challenge. You want to talk about kind of your process for mounting these things?
Yeah, so what this whole contraption right here was basically we started with the truck at bump and then compressed all the shocks and just kind of set the bypass in there where we thought it would work the best, and then all this stuff is literally just sitting here to be able to hold this bypass in place the best we can, just roughly, so we can get an idea of the angles on the shocks, how close these 2 shocks need to be to each other, and stuff like that. So you can see there's a hose clamp here around this engine cage tube just to hold this coilover in place. And then because we're going to be running a 375 diameter lower spring on this coilover, which is meant for a 3.0 diameter shock.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We're just using a roll of duct tape, which is really close to the outside diameter of what a 375 spring actually is, just so we can make sure all the clearances and everything are good. But yeah, so we got the shocks just kind of sitting where we wanted them at bump, and then I started making the tabs for the bypass on the lower side. That way we can, as you can see right now, the truck's sitting at ride height. We can check to see how all the clearances are. The biggest thing for clearance is going to be to this swinger, the inside of this swinger right here, to the rod end on the shock. It gets really close. But just with the packaging that comes with this shock package and all this stuff in the front of the truck now, like,
it's tight.
Clearance is very tight, so it works. I mean,
yeah, and obviously now we were already planning on this anyways, but we're not going to be able to run the stock brake setup on this thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to we're thinking about running manual or hydro boost.
Manual brakes more than likely.
Yeah, but there's just no way to fit the stock brake system on there. As far as steering, the other thing that was done as well in that montage is the box got mounted. So we had to move the box up quite a bit in order to have straight tie rods, because what would happen is this lower tie rod right here would come in contact with the pitman arm, which is way up there now. So moving the box up was essential in order to achieve that. We kept the same pitman arm and everything just moved up. So we utilized this bolt hole right here, which was one of the factory mounting positions, and we used that for one of the lower holes in the box, and that helped everything because we didn't have to start from scratch. We could work off one of the holes, so that made it a little bit easier. And then Christian ended up mounting this one second, so he just notched into the frame, put a sleeve in there, and welded that in. And then the one going into the tube was the fun one, right?
Yeah, that one was not the best to do, but it's all in there now. So basically what we did is brought it up, and then the steering box also went in towards the center of the truck about 1 inch to 2 inches as well. That way the pitman arm, when it turns fully now, it doesn't hit the frame. Because if it stayed in the same spot and we just moved it straight up, the pitman arm would come over and contact the frame before it actually got to full lock. So we had to push the box in just a little bit, and then once all the points were mounted, I went in and added this gusset as well. It's basically 3/8 thick of material in there holding basically everything just together, so it doesn't have a tendency to want to break off the truck. So.
Yeah, there's no deflection or weird forces on the tubes or anything like that. Not much really more to update you guys on. I guess we can just wrap it there. Is there anything else you want to talk about? All right, I guess that's it. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace!